Welcome to another episode of Ruff Talk VR, a weekly podcast with in-depth game reviews, exclusive developer interviews, and the latest MetaQuest and virtual reality news. We join our hosts, the father-son team of D. Scruffles and Stratus today, as they spend another episode breaking down and discussing the world of virtual reality.
Hey, welcome to this episode of Ruff Talk VR. Today we have one that I'm pretty excited for. I kind of missed this app when it first came out, so
I missed the drop for sure.
yeah, when we finally checked it out, I was, you know what? My expectations were definitely past, so I'm excited for this one. Today we're joined with Aaron Cryderman. He's the creator, solo developer behind Solara One, a sci-fi, I love how it's described, travel exploration app on the MetaQuest store.
I was really happy it was actually titled that. It wasn't titled like Gorilla Tag
or game or anything like that. I think it's appropriately described.
Yep.
And Solara One's a definitely an interesting app, but I think he'll describe it much better than I can. But before we get carried away, Aaron, do you mind to introduce yourself a little bit for our listeners and tell them, exactly who you are?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, my name's Aaron. As Damien and Brian mentioned, creator of Solara One. I kind of have a technology background. So I worked back in the day. I don't know if anyone remembers BlackBerry, but I rode the BlackBerry roller coaster for quite a few years. I was there for 17 years doing mostly database work. And that was sort of like where I did different programming languages and got into that kind of computer stuff. Also, I've always had an interest in photography. I used to have a photography business. So I did wedding photography and I did my own space art and stuff like that. Also a bit of an audiophile and creative in that department too. I've created a bunch of digital music. I've never done anything with it. So I'm kind of diverse, right? I'm interested in art. I'm interested in computers. I do some programming, just a little bit of everything. And it kind of set me up, I think, for this idea of creating a virtual reality game. And so, yeah, it was about 2 years ago and I quit my job and just decided to take a crack at this just for some crazy challenge, So that's kind of where I started out. Yeah.
That's awesome. I remember you having a BlackBerry.
I just want to say I had Blackberries when they were the black and white screen, and then we upgraded. They were company given, and then we had but holy crap, I loved my BlackBerry.
The middle wheel,
everything. Oh yeah, and then one of the versions, I think there was a program you could change the flashing pattern. It was a cool device. So
I remember playing with it.
Yeah, so you had that original one that won the it was like a BlackBerry 850 or 950 it was called. It took a AA battery. Do you remember if you even took one of those?
No, every one I had a rechargeable.
Oh, okay.
I'm almost positive.
Yeah.
I could be wrong though, as far as I know.
Way back, the way back original ones were an actual AA battery. So you probably came on board a little bit after
after that, I think.
The really archaic one. Yeah.
I remember how
I used to love my BlackBerry too.
The color screen was to go from a black and white to a color. Holy crap.
And I remember playing phone app games on them as a little kid too.
I think it had the push to talk too, to other BlackBerry. I'm thinking it had that. And anyways.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's quite
that's a good background.
The journey. And, how did you discover VR? You say, it was a challenge to go into, but a lot of us, we try VR, the first time or the first couple times, and we have that wow moment of, it's not only something I want to do as a consumer, but I want to get into this. So, what was your introduction to virtual reality?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, well, going way back, as a kid, computing and stuff, when I was 8 years old, I started programming. This was back in the in the early 80s, So I was always kind of interested in programming, GW Basic, silly little games. So I was always kind of interested, but then I got away from game development. I played a few games here and there in university, but in terms of VR, I think my first experience was my friend. I got a friend, Vin, and he had a headset. He just had me over to his place and he threw this thing on me. And what did we do? It was some Jurassic Park experience where the dinosaur swings his head over in front of you. And I was freaking out. I was screaming. I'm like, holy frick, man. And so that was my wow moment. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. And then he had me into it at his office as well. They had an HTC Vive and we played some zombie shooter. So those are my two first experiences. And this stuff is really interesting. I'm So that was kind of like my first experiences with VR were those two things. But there was a big time between then and when I actually decided to start doing it myself. There's probably a good 4 years in the middle. And then I got like in the Meta Quest, I got the first Meta Quest when it came out. And it's like, yeah, just like Star Wars and stuff like that, roundabout mini golf, Beat Saber, all the standard stuff. But then when the Quest 2 came out, I started playing a little bit more with the outdoorsy stuff because I'm an outdoor guy too. I didn't even mention it, but like I'm into backcountry hiking and stuff. Like I'll go to New Zealand and I'll hit the mountains for like 2 months and I'll go like 1,000 kilometers backcountry and stuff like that, right? So like I love the outdoors and I love nature and stuff like that. So I started playing around with Nature Treks and Brink Traveler, and they kind of they create this outdoorsy kind of experience. And after playing those, that's when I kind of started thinking, this is kind of interesting. This is kind of like this is fitting my personality. Like I like the outdoors, and I don't like the Canadian winters, right? So like it's freaking cold up here, man, and it's like I don't like outdoor snow sports. I don't like cold. I like warm. So it's like in the winter, I put this thing on, I go to some warm place, I sit there. I'd even put a little heater on beside me and I sit in this cool place, right? And so after playing their experiences, I'm like, I'm interested in basically everything. I'm also super into astronomy stuff, right? I've got a science degree from the University of Waterloo. Took pretty much every astronomy course that they had there. So I'm like super interested in astronomy. So it's like, so I got these outdoor games that I like to play where you can be relaxing. And I'm also fascinated by astronomy and space travel and SpaceX and Starship and all this kind of stuff. So I'm like, why don't I create a relaxing world that I want to go to relax, where I can go hang out and be in the stars and try to make it feel like a real spacewalk at the same time. And it's kind of different than anything that's out there, right? Because there's the meditation apps that are like hardcore meditation. And there's like sci-fi games, but they tend to be a little more interactive, a little more shoot things, not relaxing. So I'm like, well, why don't we kind of combine outdoorsy relaxation with kind of astronomy, sci-fi, outer space, and then you've got just kind of your own experience. Mostly I just wanted to create a place that I want to go to hang out and chill. And then hopefully it's a cool place that other people want to go hang out and chill at too, right? So yeah.
Well, I got to say, when I went on my first spacewalk, I was instantly blown away. I wasn't prepared for, I kind of liked getting to the point. I'm like, oh shit, somewhere I can travel. Cool.
Mm-hmm. You start in the jungle, then you go to the spaceport kind of area.
I was blown away. I think you were like seconds behind me and you're like, oh, is it good? I'm like, nah, dude, it's amazing.
Well, we started with the jet thrusters, just kind of Iron Manning it around the space. And right away I was like, wow, the graphics are tight on this spaceship I'm flying around. And then I did the airwalk and some of the other ones. But then I discovered, or no, you discovered at first, all the different destinations you can go.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow,
right,
there's not only a couple that you can go to, there's a good handful here. And some of them get really freaking beautiful.
So I got to know though, did you create these these planets exist in the real world, or are these like totally?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think too, sometimes people play my game and they leave reviews and they're like, thanks for this being so educational, right? And it's like, well, it's grounded in reality, and there probably are places like this out there, but these planets are like completely imaginative, right? So these are not based on exact real planets that have been discovered. And that's another whole cool topic we can get into, is exoplanets, right? Planets that have been discovered outside of our solar system. That's something I'm super fascinated with too. Because it's like basically 1992. Before 1992, human beings did not know if planets existed in our universe outside of our solar system. Back in 1992, there was 9 planets, right? It was like all the way up to Pluto, Mars, Venus, Earth, all that stuff. But 1992, they discovered and they could prove that there was actually a planet outside of our solar system orbiting another star out there. And it was just like a pivotal moment. It's like before that, it's like we didn't know if planets were a standard thing, right? So that's something I'm fascinated with. So the exoplanet count now, they've discovered over 5,600 planets in other star systems. So the consensus is there's just billions and billions and billions. We know there's billions of stars. We can see those. The planets, it takes work to discover and prove that they're there, but there's way more planets than there are stars. So there's just billions and billions of planets out there, right? So I'm off on a tangent. I can't even remember your question now. I'm totally shooting off.
No, I'm actually I'm liking the route you're going down. No, the question was just based around whether these were factual planets or planets that you made up. But it sounds like although you created these planets on your imagination, I mean, the law of probability and numbers with billions and billions would say that your planets actually probably do exist.
That's exactly my thinking. That's exactly my thinking. There's so many planets out there that there'll probably be one that looks almost exactly like it, just due to the probabilities. There's so many planets out there. There's got to be stuff like that, right? But yeah.
So we did Google a couple of them, and you're like, I'm not finding these, and then that's
not finding this planet. Yeah,
that's when it kind of.
And I just make up some my own silly names and stuff for them too. Like, yeah, they're not definitely not real names, definitely not real planets, but they're probably out there somewhere.
And it sounds like, you're a junkie for this stuff. You love it. It sounds like you took inspiration for these from, the lore of them from existing planets, or how did you fully come up with them?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't even know. I just just randomly come up with something. And mainly I think what I was trying to do was make them different experiences, right? Because if you go to every planet and they look and feel the same, that's boring. So mostly I was just trying to get variety. So every time I add a new planet and I'm like, let's change up the moon, let's change up the colors, let's make it a gas giant versus a rocky planet. So mostly just variety, and there's no real rhyme or reason to going into each planet or each location, just sort of variety to keep it interesting,
Well, what's really interesting is the fire planet. What's it called? The big, it's like a giant
Regalia, the big red giant.
OMG. It had me really questioning a lot of things in our own solar system when I was like, dude, how does it really stay burning for so long? I mean, there's this big friggin' thing and it's giving off heat. And then I'm like, well, won't it eventually go out someday? Like no matter what the sun, it's going to eventually fizzle out. And then I got that weird feeling inside for a moment of like, as a planet, and I mean, it's not forever, right? So it was.
Yeah,
I thank you for that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, all stars, they're gonna burn out, right? Everyone's got a different lifespan. I think our star, is 5 billion years old, if I'm remembering correctly. I know it's got billions of years left, so we're good for a little while. But yeah, everything's kind of time limited, right? Yeah, it's really interesting stuff.
Yeah, no, I like the thought it invoked in me, as I guess dark as that might sound, but it had me. But even the asteroids, because that was the first one I think I went into, and then I was guilty of this could be potentially really educational, because I think you mentioned like what the asteroids contain for minerals, which sounded true to me based on some of the knowledge we have of asteroids that should have.
Yeah, and that stuff with the information about the asteroids, that's totally true. Like asteroids in general do contain the things that are mentioned, right? So it's like sometimes it's hard to tell with the game, like where does the education end and the imaginary stuff begin. But it's kind of like grounded in reality, and then I think the visuals are a little more imaginary.
Well, I will stick to my argument that all your stuff is factual because it cannot be proven not true. And just by the sheer numbers, I mean, there could be a planet with 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth, Nobody can say otherwise.
Yeah.
And, how did you create these environments as a solo developer? That sounds like quite
we didn't mention that.
These are pretty beautiful. So, I mean, how did you come up with these?
Yeah, great question. So a lot of the things that I did, what it was, it's a series of shortcuts. As a solo developer, you don't have an artist, you don't have a sound expert, you don't have an animation expert, you don't have any of these things, right? So a lot of these are purchase assets. So the planet pack is something I went out and bought. So there's a guy in Ukraine actually who made them. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, and I'd love to give him a pitch right here. Maybe afterwards I'll punch it in the chat, or it'll come to me later. But so most of the visuals, like most of 3D assets, are things I purchased, and it just saves you so much time. Because the one place that I didn't get into was tools like Blender and 3D model creation. I looked at the overhead involved on that stuff. You can do it, but like Blender, you're looking at like 3-4 months of full time just like to kind of get up to speed with it, right? So that stuff I would go through the Unity asset store, see what they've got, do a lot of research, and it wouldn't always be the first one. I'd buy a planet pack, but it might not be compatible with my pipeline, or it might not look good enough. So I just, I remembered the name. It was Forge 3D. So Forge 3D was the creator of the planets. Fantastic planet pack, and he's got a ton that I haven't even used. But super talented guy, and he was great to work with too, because I had a few little issues and problems with some of the shaders. He worked through it and sent me the updated code and stuff like that. So yeah, so even though it's a solo developer, it's still a bit of a collaboration, right? It's like, well, I'm buying this asset here, and things like the music pack, same thing. Did a bunch of research, find a great place to buy the music and stuff like that. So it's kind of like you're pulling a bunch of pieces in together from a bunch of different places. Yeah.
That's a great answer. I like that you do, even though, say, I'm a solo dev, but it is really a collaboration at the end of the day, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen that with a lot of solo devs, especially in the art side of things.
Yeah, that seems to be the biggest challenge for somebody
programmers, developers.
Absolutely. And I don't know if this was mentioned, so if it was, I apologize, but is the game made in Unity or Unreal?
Yeah, no, you haven't asked, and it's made in Unity. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so that was a big learning curve too, because like I'd never used Unity before, and it was even at the beginning of this project, I'm like, okay, I want to make a VR game, and I was completely new to VR creation. Like I'd never even heard of Unity. Like that's how new to this I was, like 2.5 years ago. So I started just doing Google searches online. How do I make a VR game? And it was like, yeah, okay, the two big players are Unity or Unreal, and Unity was way more compatible with the Meta Quest, and also it's like, well, what platform do I want to release this thing on? And so 2.5 years ago, I was researching, and the Meta Quest looked like it was kind of the leader in terms of number of headsets sold, and also in terms of solo developers, a lot easier to get your game to market there. So it kind of made that decision to go that route. So yeah.
Are you currently only on Quest platform?
That's right. Just on Quest platform right now. That's correct. Yeah.
And I was going to say, do you have plans for other headsets like Pico or PC VR or anything like that?
Great question. Right now, no plans. I think I'm just going to ride out the marketing for a while with the Quest and kind of see how it goes. And part of this too is the enjoyment factor. And I had fun making the game, but when it comes to getting it to work on another platform, very technical, not super fun. But let's say if I can make some decent money with it on the Quest platform, hey, I don't have to do all the work myself. I can hire someone to get it going on another platform. So it's something I definitely keep in mind for the future, but presently no plan at the current moment to do any other platforms. Yeah.
Makes sense. Well, the game just came out a month ago as well,
and
too.
It's $9.99
Mm-hmm.
plus applicable tax, depending on where you live. But that's a great price point. I'm going to give you props on that. You could have probably gone 4 or 5 higher and gotten away with it, but I think the $9.99 makes it affordable enough that, like, how do you really say no?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if it's a good experience,
It's like, make it at a price point where people are like, if they have any interest in it, it's like, well, $10, sure, why not, right? Give it a spin. So yeah, exactly.
I have spent $10 on some games that
not even games
were not
frivolous things.
Oh, well, let's be honest. It's 2 cups of coffee, depending on where you live too.
Yeah, like what can you buy for $10 nowadays, right? Like I don't know in the US, but in Canada, food prices in the last year have just skyrocketed. It's ridiculous. Like a loaf of bread is like $7 for a loaf of bread. For us, that's like unheard of, So yeah, you can have a loaf of bread, or you can go travel amongst the stars. Tough call.
You're never going on a space station for $10, But I got to give you a lot of props. I went into it not knowing what to really expect, just based on the words around it. But it is so damn good once you're in there.
Well, I love that you don't try to sell it as anything that it isn't. It's very clear on the story page. It's like we said at the start, travel and exploration app, and it does great at that. And at what point in the development did you know that that's the direction you wanted to go? Was that something that you went into this going, look, I'm not looking to make a shooter game or puzzles. I just want to.
There's no zombies on the space station.
Yeah, there's no challenges and puzzles. At what point did you figure out the game direction?
That's a great question. Here's the funny thing. Here's the true story with this, right? So when I was first making this game, it was a complete evolution. I didn't have a vision for the final game at all from day one. It evolved completely, which is, a lot of people say that's a terrible way to go with VR, because once you go down a certain path, it's so much work to do something, right? But originally, it was going to be, I wanted to have, and it's nothing to do with the current game at all, but I don't know if you guys ever played Asteroids on the old Atari system. It's just a little triangular spaceship with asteroids, right? And so like my first VR game I wanted to have 3D asteroids. So what I wanted to do, I wanted to sit down in a virtual room. I wanted to have like a hologram asteroid field in front of you, maybe 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet, little asteroids floating around. I was going to have a little spaceship floating around and maybe some controls, and you could shoot little asteroids, right? So I was like, okay, let's do that. But then I'm like, well, you got to be sitting someplace cool. Like you're just sitting in a boring room. Like let's put the people on the space station, right? Let's start with the space station. So now you can play asteroids. You can look out the window. You're in outer space. This is cool, right? So I get the space station asset. I throw it in there. I throw in the Milky Way galaxy. I throw the headset on. I start floating around, and I'm like, hold on a second. I'm like, floating around in outer space outside the space station is only like 10,000 times better than a stupid little hologram blowing up thing. I'm like, this is no contest. I'm like, this is freaking crazy. The initial concept, like it was like 2 days. I had like the space station and the Milky Way there floating around, and I'm like, hold on, this is like that crazy epic feeling. So I'm like, okay, hold on. We're not doing asteroids. We're going to do some kind of outer space adventure, right? And then it was just a continual evolution. Like even the spaceport level and the level in the jungle, like those weren't even in the vision at all to start with. To start with, it was just like planet Earth and floating around in outer space. And then I didn't have a space lounge. I'm like, well, you got to have someplace cool to hang out inside the space station. So I put in the space lounge. So then I'm like, okay, this is cool. But I'm like, this is totally not sellable. I'm like, okay, so you float around in a space lounge on planet Earth. It's like, okay, people are going to play for like 3 minutes. Like, that's cool. But like, now what, right? So then I'm like, oh, we can do more planets. So I started adding the planets in, start to do some effects and wormholes and things like that. And then I'm like, well, let's add in some more spacewalks. But I'm like, it's still not enough to like sell. It's cool. But it's like, so then I started thinking every night I go to bed and I just think of like, okay, what are some ideas? I'm like, well, we got airports to go to places on Earth. Let's make a spaceport. But I think the key thing for me, all the levels, is I wanted to have, like, do you guys you ever notice you sit around a campfire, how it's mesmerizing, how you can't help it. Your eyes are drawn into the fire and it's relaxing and you're just kind of drawn into it and you're almost in this kind of really relaxed and mesmerized state, right? And so that was kind of the feeling that I wanted to get on every single level. So I want to have things that are gently moving, that are peaceful, but that are like immersive and mesmerizing. So that was kind of like the theme with every single level. So like there's always some movement and there's something happening, but it's not happening quickly. So planet Earth, you're in orbit around. So the Earth is just slowly moving, right? So you've got some movement, and then you've got the ring of the space station. You can control that slowly moving. And every planet that you'll visit, you'll notice they're not stationary. There's something going on. Like Thasos has got some lightning and churning clouds. The red giant, you can see the solar flares and you can see the movement, right? And so that same sense of movement I wanted to have in the spaceport too. So that's why I had the clouds. So that you have this kind of mesmerizing, something that just kind of draws you in, that's kind of peaceful. And then I really had this vision of, I love travel, right? Like I was talking about the backcountry hiking and stuff, and Hawaii was a place that as a high school, university, and public school, my parents, we would go like every year to Hawaii. So I love tropical palm trees. I love the ocean. And so, and I love, like, I have so many pictures I've taken, like landscapes and stuff like that. So I'm like, okay, I want to have a bit of that tropical ocean essence, just because this is the place I want to hang out. I love it, right? So that was what kind of inspired the first level in the jungle. And again, like the water, it's just gently moving. You have that gentle movement, and the northern lights, they're not stationary. There's some motion there. So that was it's kind of like, I want people to be relaxed and almost be in a meditative state, but I don't want it to feel like work. Because I don't know, you guys don't really strike me like the meditation type. You guys probably haven't done meditation classes, I'm guessing, right?
I actually, I love a good meditation app, either from.
Cool.
Yeah, I'll go back all the
okay.
way to cassette tape, back in the mid '80s, late '80s.
Okay.
I would have cassette tapes for subliminal and meditative, and then in-person meditation, and then in VR. I think we've hit every single meditation app. It's
Okay,
not
well, I
anything
stand corrected then. Okay.
Yep, not something that I practice every day, but it's something that I
Yeah.
appreciate. And when you were
Sure.
talking about like the campfire, it triggered me of like, you know, the sound of the ocean, the campfire. It all instills that like, I think of it as like primitive meditation. Like we're supposed to relax in those environments. You know, if you're the light wind, it's almost like all the elements create a focal meditative point. But I'm not like a meditation junkie.
Sure. Okay. But basically, it was like, for me, like I'm kind of a high stress, high anxiety guy, right? And so I wanted to create this relaxed place. And I think, too, like I think we're at a point in time on almost the entire planet of, I think people in general are at their highest stress levels ever. You got so many things going on, right? We've got global warming, we've got wars, we've got Ukraine war, we've got Gaza war, we've got all the political stuff going on in the United States, stuff with Russia, and kids now, apparently kids are at an all-time high for stress levels, and they think probably fueled, a big part of it is cell phones, right? And bullying and all this stuff. So I feel like the whole world is at this state of the highest stress it's ever been at. But the thing is, I think a lot of people don't have time to go out to the spa, or the money to go out to a spa, or the time to go to an official meditation class or whatever. And so I was trying to kind of fill that gap. And it's like, well, here's a cool, relaxing place you can go. Even if you've only got 5 minutes or 10 minutes, you know, you can go and just get away from everything. And I think too, like the thing with meditation, it can feel a little bit like work. Like for me, like I've done different meditation, but it feels like work. It's like, it takes real effort. It's like, okay, I got to turn off my phone and I have to like really concentrate on clearing my mind, and I have to really concentrate on the breathing. And it always kind of felt like a little bit like work. And so what I was hoping with this experience with Solara One was to make it not feel like work. You just put it on and it just happens. You don't have to think about every little detail. You don't have to go drive somewhere, you know? So I wanted to create, just help people de-stress in this crazy stressful world in kind of a fun way, but that it's fun and it's not work. Like you can relax, but without it feeling like it's effort, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, not once do I think I heard anybody say, now breathe in through your nose and out through your, you know, there was no force. But no, I like your approach, because if you've never meditated before or had no desire, you're going to find yourself at certain points. I mean, like myself last night, there was a couple of occasions where I was doing nothing. I was staring at the planet. I was outside with my thrusters because I like the
jet one.
Yeah, 100%. And I'll go down the side of the whole space station from top to bottom. But I was very relaxed, and I kept wanting to go to the next one after. Like, I want to explore this. I want to see it. And I want to go to the next one.
I kept going to shut off my headset. And I kept being like, I'll only do one more. And then one more.
So it was done brilliantly, with nothing forced upon the consumer that like, this is a quote unquote meditation. But you even called it out midway we were playing it. You're like, this is kind of like meditative, huh? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, definitely, dude, 100%.
The first time I looked out in the sky on the airwalk, when it was like the guided one, where you don't do anything, you just sit there, boom,
go for the ride. I'm
like, well, yeah, it's a scenic tour.
Yep, it's relaxing.
Yeah, it's very good. And
yeah, exactly. It's almost like those rides at Disney where they have like they drive you around and you're just looking out at the animals in the zoo, but you don't have to do anything. You're just sitting there, you're just taking it in, right? Yeah. Exactly.
But you've given people the option to go. I mean, I like the guided ones, and the fact that there's minutes attached to them, like 4 minutes, 7 minutes.
Well, but I think it's important to say there's a lot of different use cases for headsets. A lot of people, they use them they like shooter games. They like, high intensity games. There's a lot of people that they like media watching with it. There's some people that do the productivity side, and there's some people that they want to watch something. They just want to relax. They might not want to swing their arms a bunch. And dude, you might work a really long work day, use your headset a bit and be like, before I finish up, before I go to bed, like, take me on a couple airwalks, let me unwind. Yeah. So I can totally see the use case and the consumer type for it.
Standpoint. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 1,000,000%.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great idea. Like, especially if you play like a high energy shooter or something like that, and it's late at night and you're about to go to bed and you're totally jacked up on adrenaline, might not be a bad idea. Just like bring it down a level for a little bit. Right. Exactly.
And the game's been out for about a month. I think came out, May 2nd? And then it's...
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's $9.99, like you said, a steal of a price. Yeah. and it's got a 4.9
It
rating.
does. It does.
So the people that are playing it, seems like they're enjoying it. I mean, but overall on your end, it sounds kind of obvious the answer to this with a 4.9 rating. But what's the reception been that you've heard from consumers? What do they love? What's stuff that they wish there was there? What's the feedback been?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, the feedback, honestly, like I had absolutely no idea what to expect when we rolled this thing out, because basically I just locked myself in the office here for like 2 years, worked on this. I had one or two friends that would test it out, right? But I mean, no big scale testing. So I had one or two friends would take it for a spin. They helped me with bugs and stuff. So I had no idea about the reception. And I remember when we released it, the very first review we got, it was so incredible. It was like this guy, I forget his name. It's on the Meta store, so you can fish through, look at the oldest one. But he was just like, he's like, this was just the most amazing immersive experience. And I think he said something like, thank you for fulfilling my childhood dream of going to outer space. And it was just like, wow. And so, yeah, the very first review we got was just phenomenal. And the reception has been nothing short of stupendous. Like, I'm so happy with the responses that we've got. So many people that are just blown away by it. And I think part of it's the price point too. I think like if you were charging $30 for this, people are going to expect a lot more. So for $10, you're going in with no expectations. I find that too. Like if I go to the theater and I haven't really watched the trailer and I don't really have any expectations for a movie, it's a lot easier to be impressed with it, right? So I think a lot of people are coming into this no expectations. They don't know what to expect. So that's great. You're coming in with like an open palette and or an empty palette. And so yeah, people have been just absolutely generally blown away by it. And what I do in terms of user feedback and wish lists is I keep track of everything that people are asking for. And a lot of times you'll have one person that wants something, but no one else has ever asked for it. So what I do is I just keep waiting for the feedback until a bunch of people have asked for the same thing. And then it's like, okay. So the jet thrusters was one of the top of the list things. And I mean, I knew I wanted jet thrusters too, even like months ago, but 6 months ago, honestly, the programming was over my head. I just knew it was going to be too much. But a month ago, it was just over a month ago. And that was like one of the top user requests was the free fly jet thrusters. So I'm like, okay. So I closed the door, locked myself back in my office and those took me a good 3 weeks to hammer out those jet thrusters. A lot of curse words and a lot of crazy stuff. There's a built-in physics engine in Unity that you can use. And I tried that for 2 days and it just wasn't cutting it. Like I was bouncing off of things and you'd be spinning and you'd feel like you're going to be sick to your stomach and you'd be trying to float and it wouldn't float smoothly. It was jittery. So after 2 days, I'm like, you know what? I got to just go back to first principles and I got to code the physics myself, man. So I was like, okay, let's do this. So I just got deep into it, momentums and inertias and forces and vectors and all sorts of stuff for that. And so in terms of wish list, to get back to your question, I'm trying to think in terms of what people are asking for now. I think one of the top requests right now is seated mode, right? So when you're sitting, you can boost the player height up so that you don't feel like you're down close to the ground. We've had a couple people ask for that. A lot of people are asking about those buttons in Space Lounge. There's 2 doors that don't open. And when you push them, they're like, oh, sorry, this is a prototype only, right? And so a lot of people are asking for that. That's a bigger one. I'm definitely going to be doing it, but we don't have any timelines on that. That's going to be a real challenge. I'm wrapping my head around a lot of things. Basically, right, like video games are not meant to be in rotating reference frames. Like I haven't seen any other game where you rotate in a circle like on the ring like this. Like that just made my brain melt and it broke so many things in Unity. Like it just wasn't meant to do that. So you got to do all trick and hacks and things, So like when you're standing in the space station and you drag that slider and the ring starts rotating around, the ring isn't actually rotating. Like I'm rotating the entire world around the center axis of the ring so that the player is actually still upright. That was the only way you could do it. But if I open up those side doors and the floor curves up on an angle, now you're in a situation where like the players, you need to start rotating the player on an angle and then you're not in a flat reference frame anymore. So I'm leaning toward having one of those side doors when it opens, like, in Star Trek, the turbo lifts, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you go on the turbo lift and you can go down and they can also go side to side. So I'm like, you know what, here's what I'm going to do. We'll have the door open. You go into a little kind of turbo lift kind of thing. The door closes and then it can just open up in another room with a flat floor that I don't have to have you walking on a curved surface. And I think that's going to be the simplest way to get around that nightmare, because walking on a curved surface, I don't think that's the place that I want to go. I thought about it, and I'm thinking the turbo lift kind of thing might be a good way around that. And another top request is people want to be able to travel back and forth between the 3 different levels. So right now you can kind of only go forward. You go from the jungle, you ride the taxi up to the spaceport, and then you go through the teleporter up to the space station. But if you want to go from the space station back to the spaceport, right now you have to pull up the game menu, go back to the main menu and select a level. But a lot of people are asking for like a seamless transition back down. So like the other door on the space station might open to a transporter room. And that transporter room initially would only let you teleport back down if you were in orbit around planet Earth. But in future updates, maybe we'll have some other planet surfaces you could visit. So if you're in orbit around Thasos, why not go down to Thasos? And, you know, that would be cool. Go hang out down there and have some landscapey kind of relaxed view. So that's another top request, is just to be able to go back and forth between the levels. And in the spaceport, that would probably be like to go from the spaceport back to the jungle, there'd be like another taxi call. So you go back to where the taxi landed. Maybe we put a taxi call button there. The taxi can come back and get you. And so those are all things I'm going to keep in mind for the future. But the thing that's crazy with Unity development and VR is how incredibly complex stuff is under the hood. So a simple thing like that is like, oh, we'll just teleport you back down to the planet, or we'll have the taxi come and pick you up. There's just a cascade of things that you have to deal with under the hood. So it's a tremendous amount of work to implement some of these things. So initially, I'm kind of leaning toward like putting in features that are easier to implement, like more bang for your buck kind of features, right? Like I can put a new planet in right now without too much effort. So, you know, that could give you a lot more experience without too much work on my part. So I'm going to have to kind of balance out, like, how much time do I want to put in this versus how many people are, you know, asking for that feature kind of thing.
Well, I'm guilty of the wishing I could pop on a planet. And what got me really wanting to was the planet with the thunderstorms, that like the whole planet's just giant fucking thunderstorm. And I'm like, what would it feel like to, not that I'd ever really probably want to go there, but what would it feel like to be standing on that planet in that environment? Or, you know, planets that I've heard rain glass, you know, like what would it be like to be on a planet that freaking does that? So I am guilty of and I did try flying into
Yeah, you went pretty deep, and I think they teleported you back, right?
No, it just, you reach a point where it's pretty much told, I think for like safety protocol, you can't go no further, which makes sense, you know, like, well, you're going to die, dude. You're going into the fucking sun, you know, but I'm like, let me see how far I can, but the rotation hack is pretty cool, because I did play with the slider, put it on like full rotation, and that's a good feature where you're not forcing, like, I was trying to think of like motion sickness issues, and even though you're in a space environment, I didn't feel any sort of nothing. So you're really in control of that spin.
And I love to hear that, you know, hey, this is something that you went full time with. You know, there's 2 ways that can go. It can release and you go, you know what, I'm done with it now. VR market sucks, whatever. I'm going back to the workforce. Or you double down and it, you know, you do even more of it. And it sounds like that, you know, you have more plans for it with updates and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. Yeah. Bug fixes and new features and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. I think what I'm going to do though, is I'm going to dial down from 60 or 70 hours a week, which is what I was doing for the last 2 years. We're going to dial that down to 20 to 30 hours a week and change the pace a little bit, but absolutely. And it's so much more fun. I found when I'm only putting in 20 or 30 hours a week, it's fun again. I think the last month before the release, like it's fun to start with, and then you get to this point where it's like you're just grinding out bugs and you're just grinding out fixes. But definitely updates planned for the future for sure. Yeah.
And we've heard horror stories of the optimization that you need to do to get this to run on a mobile device.
Yeah, I didn't even get into that with you guys, but yeah, optimization. So like the spaceport, for example, right? When I first built the spaceport, so you do a build, throw the Quest headset on or whatever, I'm getting like 22 frames a second, right? You're just like chunk, you're just chugging it up. And it was just like, that was the biggest optimization challenge I had, because all the occlusion calling that was built into Unity just wasn't cutting it. And it's like, I did a bunch of reading and I ended up using a third-party calling system called Perfect Calling. Unbelievable. Now, yeah, it took probably almost a day to set it up, but it kicks your frame rate. That was one of 10 things I had to do to get that level optimized. But yeah, I would say probably half my time in development was spent optimizing it for the Quest. I'd say about half my time was just getting it to run. Now, if I had decided to release this to only the Quest 3, it wouldn't have been as big a challenge. But I thought, there's still a lot of Quest 2s out there, and I really wanted to run on both the Quest 2 and the Quest 3, so that made it a little bit extra challenging to keep the frame rate up, stuff like that. RAM limitations too, you don't have as much RAM on the Quest 2 and things like that. So yeah, there's another whole big can of worms, optimization.
I think the real money right now, and I just lack the ability to do it, would be programming an AI function that would, you give it the parameters you want, and it can at least optimize your program for you. I see no reason why they couldn't.
Yeah, if it only was that easy.
Well, it's not that someone's got to make the program that's willing to do that, but it's like there's a common theme that developers have to spend so much time. And dude, it's just got to be frustrating at some point. It's like it's no joke. Probably the least sounding fun activity in development is the optimizing it to actually work.
Yeah, I have to say I agree on that for sure. You know what I think would be so awesome is you go way back and you watch. Did you guys ever watch Star Trek: The Next Generation? Were you into that stuff?
Wasn't into it, but have watched it. Yes, I was the first. I was the first gen guy.
Yeah, yeah. So they had there was the holodeck on the starship, right? And I remember that you just talk to the computer, and then it would create a 3-dimensional environment for you that you can interact with. And I'm like, someday I think it will get to the point, I don't know when, but where you just describe the game you want to play, and the AI will just make it for the spot on you, and then you can play it. And then you're playing the game, and it'll just be an AI interface where you're like, okay, I want 3 more trees over here, and I want this interactive element here. And I think in the not so distant future, I think VR creation tools eventually will be available, with AI. But I think we're a ways off from that because it's so incredibly complex under the hood. I don't think that's going to be in the near future. So I'm kind of lucky, I think, where I'm at a point in time where, where as a solo developer, you can create a game like this with just one person. I think as the hardware gets more powerful, you can do more things with it. And when you can do more things with it, it gets more complicated. And when it gets more complicated, it takes more work to implement and more people. So we're at this kind of this teetering point where as a solo developer, it was great because I could still as a solo developer do this just by myself. But I think as the hardware gets better on the Quest in the future, I think it's going to get harder and harder for solo developers to be able to do what I did, with the caveat of AI, where eventually AI is going to make it easier again. But I think we're quite a few years still from that. That's just my gut instinct anyways. I don't know.
And did you know C# already before you got into Unity, or did you have to learn that whole new programming language?
The last time I did touch on C# in some of my university courses, but I'm talking 1994, 1995. That'll date my age a little bit too, right? So that was my last experience with C#. So yeah, that was like a whole nother thing, getting back to that. So yeah, I was pretty rusty's an understatement. Rusted out. Yeah.
And what was your method for teaching yourself Unity? Some people, they like to just start with a project and figure it out. Some people, YouTube tutorials. I know Unity has their pathways and their in-house learning tools as well. So what was your method to teach yourself?
Yeah, awesome question. To start with, I think I spent about 4 or 5 weeks learning Unity through the Unity learning tutorials, the official ones. But I only did ones that I thought would be relevant to what I needed to do, because there's a lot of things that Unity can do that wouldn't be relevant, like 2D stuff, right? Like I knew I wanted to do a 3D game. So I ran through those tutorials to start with. That was kind of the foundation. And then I just rolled with that in online forums for a year and a half. And then when ChatGPT really took off, for the last 6 months, that's my new go-to. And when you're trying to learn a new concept or understanding Unity concepts, you just ask ChatGPT the question, and it blows my mind. It's the most intelligent teacher you've ever met. I think of it honestly as one of my employees that doesn't get paid. Like it has No, I would have figured it all out and I would have got there, but in terms of time saving, it shaved months of development time off because you'd have a complex like the planet simulator, right? You pick up the planet in my game and you throw it around. It's like figuring out how to set that up on the back end. Just got a little bit of help from ChatGPT, help me understand the concepts, help me understand. I try not to go to it first off if I don't have to, because I still need to do some thinking myself. But occasionally you'll get stuck on a bug too, where you can't figure out a solution. Your code isn't compiling, you don't understand it, and you just throw the code at it, and it's like, oh, line number 47, you got to do this, and you're like, oh yeah, I should have seen that. So basically, online Unity learning tutorials were great for foundation, and then ChatGPT as the best tutor in the history of mankind. Yeah.
I can't argue that. I throw curveballs at it all the time with shit, and I'm always impressed with. It's like never let me down. I hate to say it, or I'll just give it my own words, and I'm like, make it sound better.
And it's important to say how you're using it too. It's not like you're just copy and pasting the code. You're using it to kind of guide yourself into understanding the concept for you to be able to do it as well. Is that correct?
That's exactly it, because those are the two ways you can use it. There's the type of person that like, the people that kind of want to cheat in school a little bit, like just give me the answer. I don't want to understand it. And then there's the people that, well, I really want to understand it. So if you use ChatGPT from that perspective, from the perspective of, I want to understand this, then it's a wonderful learning tool. If you use it from the perspective of, I don't want to understand it, I just want to paste the code in, you'll probably get it working, but you come back later, you're not going to know what the heck is going on. You're not going to understand it. You're not going to be able to tweak it. You're not going to be able to tie it in properly. So yeah, if you come at it from that proper perspective, absolutely, way to go.
Yeah, I think that's important to say. You can, like you said, the cheating is school method, or really understand it. Then you can spot when there's inaccuracies, or like you said, tweak it yourself. So I think you're using it perfectly.
Well, I would think even if you took the cheat method, at some point you're going to have to learn it. It's just because you're going to hit a wall.
I've tried to. I play around with Unity sometimes. It's pretty easy to copy and paste scripts and not look at all what's in there.
But to have a completed project, no matter what, there's no way, man. Eventually, you're going to have to know. I mean, it can only do so much, right?
I don't know, man. You copy and paste a huge script, you'll never see that.
You can have chat make a full game that'll work. Like on headset?
To a basic extent, but it's pretty buggy. Even getting it to, if you go to get it to copy and paste, how to set up the VR project, it'll give you a good outline, but you're going to have to adjust for what's modern, what's current, up to date. And then with code, sometimes there's inaccuracies with it. I play around with Unity sometimes. ChatGPT is awesome.
Oh, fun. Okay.
If anytime I've tried to take a copy and paste method, it never works perfectly. But if you ask it, how do you... it's much better at guiding. And one of my selfish requests with this game that I was dying for the second I hopped in, and I don't know if you've heard it from anybody else, has there ever been thought of a multiplayer aspect to it, to be able to go in there and explore?
I thought you were going to go lightsaber. Honest to God.
To be able to go in there and explore with a friend or just hang out like that?
Yeah, great question. I haven't had a request yet for a multiplayer. I've had two people say that they feel a little bit lonely and that they would like some sort of AI to be in there, right? And there's two reasons I'm hesitant to do either of those things right now. One is just the technical aspect. Multiplayer games means I have to do multiplayer testing. And as a solo developer, now I can't do it by myself, right? I'm going to need another person to help debug it. So now I'm going to have to get a second person on board my team. So that would be a tough hurdle. Then the other aspect is the title itself, Solara One. The idea in this was solo, right? You're getting away from you're not just getting away from your everyday stresses, you're getting away from people as well, so that you can be in this kind of isolated, separate place of clarity where you're not distracted or interrupted by other people. So it kind of the nature of the game itself, I created it with the intent of solitude, and kind of, and it demonstrated even by the name of the game itself. Now, if enough people ask for it, I consider it, but I don't think right now it's something that I'd like to put in, just because I want people to get away from everything, including other people. So it's just you, the outer space, no distraction.
When you do feel alone. I can see where someone like, I mean, if you get super duper immersed, it's like you could let your own imagination. At one point last night, you were like,
it's the cliche scale thing, you know,
like, dude, we're nothing.
Yeah, it's so cliche.
We
but
are
it's
so nothing in this whole universe. We're just a speck.
Yeah, no, it's because we were talking about the Regalia.
Is that the one that's like
the red
300 times
Correct.
the size of Earth or something?
I was like, look how freaking small we are, bro.
We're nothing.
Nothing. I know it's cliche, but it's absolutely a feeling that you get with this is the sense of scale of like, dude, this thing, we're nothing to this thing.
What we don't even know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No,
so what's that? The astronauts actually have a term for that, and they call it the overview effect, right? So astronauts that go into outer space for the first time, they get that feeling, and it's like you step so far back from everything that you've got this overview view, and you're looking like when we're down here on Earth, everything that feels so big, so important, and when you get up there and you look down, and Earth is just one little tiny speck. So, and you can Google it too, and I think there's even some 360 video content and things you can watch on the Quest about the overview effect. And so, yeah, it's a thing, right? So that's cool that it sounds like you actually experienced the overview effect from playing the game. So that's the first time I've heard someone say that, which is awesome because that's something that happens in real outer space. People really feel this overview effect. So that's super cool.
Well, that's legit.
Yeah. So I had a blast with this one. $9.99. To me, it's
a steal.
It's well worth it.
It's also we always talk about what's good experiences you could put a newcomer into VR that they could appreciate. It's like, dude, throw them in a couple of tours on any of the.
They're not going to get motion sickness.
No, they're just going to be amazed that they're in the fucking universe.
People love space. People love space. So I think
it's the unknown. You know, it's like most people are never going to go there. We only know what we see from the ground up.
And I think it's again important to know what you're getting with it. If you're a user that you need a game and high scores and levels, like, okay, it's probably not going to be for you. That's cool.
No.
But if you just want to chill, you want a nice, like you describe, a travel exploration app. I mean, dude, this is a great one without forced in your face meditation. So so I love it. I think you did a great job with it. I hope that we get to keep you around in the VR side of things. It's got a 4.9 rating, like I said. So the people that are trying it are loving it. So, I mean, to the listeners, if this game has sounded fun to you, go check it out. I said game. I shouldn't say game. If this experience.
Experience.
So before we let Aaron go, before we wrap it up, is there anything else we wanted to ask him?
Nah, man, all my boxes are checked. Potential future content, which was probably my number one selfish want. And then some of the gravy on top that may or may not happen with maybe going on a planet someday. Who knows? And then, things that he's already said he's working on. So I'm amazed that a solo dev was able to do this because visually I found it above average. Play wise, I had no hiccups. Everything was smooth. I got nothing. I got nothing other than just being a selfish consumer at this point and just kind of wanting more and more. You know what I'm saying?
No, and I love the story. You took a chance. I hope it pays off. Like I said, I hope we keep you in the VR side of things. As somebody, like I said, that plays around and tries to teach myself Unity in my spare time, I love the story that, hell, you did it and you made a whole freaking game. So huge props. Aaron, where can the listeners, if they're interested in this game, obviously, I'll post the link to actually get the game in the episode description, but where's the best place to stay up to date with you for updates and stuff with the game? Social media, Discord, anything like that?
Great question. Now, it's funny, I'm still feeling that out. I've got social channels like everywhere for everything, and I haven't really focused in. I'm leaning towards Discord. I think I just created the Discord server a couple days ago. So if you go to solaraone.com, and in the footer at the bottom, right in the center, there's a little Discord icon. So I'd probably recommend, if you want to join the community, Discord is probably a great way. But honestly, whatever tickles your fancy, because I'm just feeling this thing out. So I've got Reddit, I've got Facebook, I've got Instagram, I've got Twitter. So whatever tickles your fancy, I'm still feeling it out. But generally, in speaking with the community, I think Discord is probably going to be the dominant one. So I'll say whatever tickles your fancy, but maybe Discord.
Okay, awesome.
I'll jump into Discord today.
Yeah, well, I'll post the link for that as well. Yeah, I'll post the link for that in our show notes. So I'll post the game store page, also the Discord. Maybe we'll get a couple of the Ruff Talk listeners in there if this tickles their fancy, if they like it. So thank you so much, Aaron, for joining us today. Solara One blew us both away. I freaking loved it.
Expectations for sure.
Yeah. I didn't know what to expect when I went in. I said it at the start, but again, definitely blew us away. So hats off to you. Hopefully this isn't the last that we've seen of you. And maybe when there's more to come from the game too, maybe we can have you back on to chat some more about what's coming. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
so.
That would be great. That would be awesome. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me today, guys. I really appreciate it. And, this is great for sure. Got lots more to come. And I always like to finish, I say, to the stars. So to the stars, and thanks for your time, guys.
Awesome. I love it. And to the Ruff Talk listeners, go check out Solara One if it sounds good. Go check out their Discord. Rate them 5 stars. Rate us 5 stars too if you're feeling extra generous. And we'll check you out next week. Ciao, ciao.
Take care.